Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Change Podcast, Insights into Empowerment. And this is a podcast about bringing coaches, business leaders, entrepreneurs together to help you find what you need to make your business succeed and maybe make it just a little bit easier for you. Now, today we have a very special guest, and I can't wait to speak with her. She is a leadership consultant. She is the speaker and founder of Flipside Mind, and I want to welcome Sara Jackson. Hi, Sara.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great. The sun is out and it's a beautiful day, and heading up to cabin country here in Minnesota tomorrow. So it's a short week for me.
Yay. Well, thank you for being a guest today. And you have an amazing bio here. And I guess the first thing I'd like to know is you're the founder of Flipside Mind.
Yes,
I
started my business a few years ago. I was actually in a master's program for human resource development. And I just had this idea with everything going on kind of in the world, like looking at things from the flip side. And so trying to understand people and perspectives and where they're coming from by really looking at the way they view the world, what makes them who they are, and how would that change all of our relationships if instead of just digesting the world and our workplaces and our relationships based on how we see them, if we really put ourselves in someone else's lived experiences, to listen to their stories, to try to understand just where they're coming from. And so that was really the impetus of the business. And I had already been in HR working with teams and leaders and helping them navigate workplace conflict and relationships and team effectiveness. And so this really was just that next step of trying to reach more people, work with more organizations.
So would you say, when you say you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes, obviously seeing it from their perspective, but every single person has a different perspective. How do you kind of wrap your mind around that and decide what's right, what's wrong? Because how do you know?
Yeah, I think it really starts with coming at conversations and relationships from a place of curiosity. A lot of times we're listening to defend our own views or our own ways of doing things. We're answering questions really, or listening to answer the question. And when you take a step back and you come to things from a perspective of curiosity, it forces you to start asking really good questions from people. And so when you really dig into it, it's like, why do you believe that? Or why are you trying to do this project a certain way? Or what is it that made you make that decision from that and go in that direction? So that was really the starting point of getting to know people, of how can you get really curious? And then how can you also have compassion? So understanding that you might be meeting somebody on their worst day. There might be something going on that you have no idea, what is happening. And I always use the analogy of, when we're all sitting in traffic and we get so frustrated and somebody runs a red light or doesn't use a blinker, if we stop instead of getting frustrated, go, man, maybe they're just off a 24-hour shift. Maybe they just had some really bad news. How does that even change our own perspective and give us a little bit more compassion for people until we really understand them and can ask those questions and get to know them better?
And I think that's brilliant because, you mentioned something of so many people just listen to respond. So they can tell someone, well, this is my opinion. And you never really get to know a person that way. And I agree with you. I have learned to listen very well in doing this podcast. And so often, if your mind just stops and listens to the other person, you find some amazing questions you can ask them that give you amazing answers.
Yeah. And by doing that too, it doesn't take you long to find out what you actually have in common with people. I do exercises in my workshops where, ask 3 questions and then ask 3 questions more about one of those answers. And it only takes like 5 to 7 minutes for all of a sudden for two people to find a commonality. Oh, we both enjoy this hobby, or we both read this great book, or we like the same type of music. And that can really be a good foundation to jump off from when trying to get to know somebody. You find that one little thing that you connect with, and then you can move deeper into the harder conversations or the harder things, because we've found that affinity. And for humans, we really just want to connect with people. That is really one of our sole purposes, is to find connection. That's what we're seeking when we reach out to people. And we are sort of hardwired to gravitate towards people that are like us. It makes us feel safe. It's that tribe mentality. And so the more that we can kind of lean into that and try to find that right away, it allows us to then build that relationship even deeper.
I love that. And you did bring up a word that I really want to talk about, and that is compassion. And oftentimes in this day and age, you talk about someone that is having a bad day, or we make up a story about them. We don't have compassion for people like we should. We make up our own stories about why they did that. And, 99% of the time it's wrong. So do you see compassion coming back to the workforce, to the workplace, or are you teaching that?
I think we have to bring it back a little bit more. Like I said, we live in a very polarizing world. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we know that the leaders that show compassion, that create that psychological safety in the workplace, allow others to model that as well. And you're building that foundation of trust, and nothing can happen. No project can get completed. There, you can't have success. People don't feel loyal to an organization unless they really do trust the people that they're working with. And that is allowing yourself to be human. And that was actually, I started my own podcast called "Ope Your Human is Showing" for that purpose. Is like, what are all the things that make us human that we're all going through? And we're messy. We don't get it right all the time. We say the wrong things. We have bad days. We let our emotions get in the way of, something we logically know we should or shouldn't do. And so really embracing that and bringing humanity back into the workplace. It's not just about the KPIs or the projects and the goals and the money. It really is about the people, and those organizations that put the people first, and those managers that really have that compassionate leadership, are the ones that are really successful.
Wow. And I think that's so important because, I'm old. I lived through the greed is good days, and there was no compassion, which creates a scenario in the workplace of no compassion for anyone or anything. And as I look back on something like that, I think what you're talking about is so, so important. So kudos to you for recognizing that and bringing that back into play. I love that. Now, tell us a little bit about your podcast. What was your epiphany that's like, I need to do this?
Yeah, it was just, again, a way to get my voice out there. I feel like I had a lot to say. I used to do a lot of writing, but I like the conversational aspect of podcasts. And so once again, it was really diving into what does it mean to be human? And so it really brings in some things from psychology, sociology, behavioral sciences, leadership, emotional intelligence, really just kind of putting it all together to help people understand, why do we do the things we do? Why do we think the things we think? And how does that play out in those personal relationships, those work relationships, finding your purpose and being satisfied in life, having goals, things like, why do we judge others? Why do we have those biases that we do? And some of it is just hardwired into us, but there are those skills that you can build to help you grow and to help you be more self-aware. Really, everything comes down to self-awareness. And if you're aware of your habits, you can then change your habits, and you can have that positive impact on your relationships and sort of bend and flex a little bit more in order to accomplish whatever it is you need to accomplish.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the things I heard you mention is emotional intelligence. And that's kind of a word that's been thrown around a lot recently, but I think it's so important. Can you explain to our audience What is your definition of emotional intelligence, or the book definition?
Sure. Well, I really like to think of it as a model. Every situation that we're in is neutral. By nature, it is neutral. We're the ones that assign meaning to it. And that's our thoughts, that's our lived experiences, that is, how we're perceiving the world. And what happens is that our emotions then trigger our reaction. And that's where we sometimes go, "Ooh, I shouldn't have done that," or "Ooh, I shouldn't have said that." And so really, again, with emotional intelligence, the foundation is self-awareness. How well do I know myself, how I react, how I behave, and then how can I change that reaction or that thought process to impact those relationships? So relationship management, how do I function around other people? And it's that intelligence piece, right, of being able to stop yourself in the moment and go, okay, I'm feeling something right now, and I don't think it's going to come out in the right way, or maybe this isn't the appropriate time to talk about this or have a conversation. So it's really flexing that muscle and being able to gauge, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What is coming up for me? How do I want to respond to this? And that then is going to have that ripple effect and that positive impact on, what do you want to come out of this situation? What's the ideal goal here? Do I want to tell somebody that they're violating a boundary? Do I want to get to know that person? Or do I need to be really honest and say, I didn't get enough sleep tonight or last night, and I'm really tired and I'm not thinking clearly, and I just can't make this decision right now. I need to think and process and wait for a better day, or get a snack. Hangry is definitely a thing. Low blood sugar.
Just,
So
yeah, just like little kids, they're cranky because they're sleepy or hungry.
it is. And it's really just diving down deep and going like, what is going on right now? And that self-compassion too, of like, I don't have to always be on. I can recognize when I need to do a few things to get myself in a better headspace.
I love that. And, when I started my spiritual journey, which has been, 15 years ago, you said something that literally changed my life, is that everything is neutral until you place an emotion on it. And then I read a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it says in there, take nothing personally. What the other person thinks is not about you. It's about what's going on inside of them. And that helped tremendously. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with it. A quote that absolutely changed my perspective on a lot of things was, other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And so when you walk around, we all think we're a little narcissistic, right? A little self-absorbed. And we're sitting here going, oh gosh, they think this, or they're going to judge me, or I need to make them happy and feel, that's where I get my self-worth from. The minute we stop and go, they can think whatever they want to, and it is not my job to curate myself for their benefit. There's a little nuance to that. It's not giving you permission to walk around and say, I am who I am and I'm never going to change. It's more about that self-awareness of saying, no, I feel rooted in my authenticity. I feel like I know who I am. If you're going to judge me or dislike me for some of those things, I have to let you have that opinion. I shouldn't need to try to change your opinion. And again, people are worried about their own stuff. They have things going on in their life, and they're not thinking about us as much as we think they are.
Exactly. And, one of the things I tell my clients is, don't ever change who you are because someone either doesn't like you, doesn't agree with you. You still are entitled to what you think. And that in what I've worked with, has freed people up to just be who they are and understand that not everyone is going to like you. Even if you're the nicest person, there's a trigger about you somewhere deep inside of them, and just let it go and be who you are, because there's no one like you.
Yeah. And we wear masks. We try to fit into society. Once again, it's about that safety thing. We need to conform a little bit to feel comfortable in certain situations. And there's nothing wrong with that. You go into work and you put on that more professional hat, and you're at home with your friends and you can be a little goofy and more silly. But it's really recognizing, like, who am I deep in my core? What are my values? What are my beliefs? What are my goals in this life? Because at the end of the day, really, you are the only one that you're accountable to. And if you're living an inauthentic life, we know that that makes people really unhappy. That's where they get into these, careers that 10 years down the road, they're like, oh, I took this because it was the right thing to do or the good job on paper. And now I'm really unsatisfied. I'm not happy. I go in, I punch a clock and I do my job, but it's not fulfilling that deeper soul purpose, that deeper thing that resonates within you. And sometimes people need to peel back and go, when was the last time I was really authentically me? And for some, that's when they were a kid, right? You get put in these systems, or you're trying to please somebody or live up to this expectation that is imposed by the outside world. And we need to go back to what makes me happy? What do I enjoy doing? What are those hobbies that fill me up? What is a big goal that I want to have for my life? And really getting serious about that puts you on that authentic living path. And it really does lead to a lot more satisfied life, but just happier and joyful in general.
I love that. And you saying that the last time authenticity could have happened was when you're a child. And when you have that freedom of thinking, you can just go in a room and play by yourself. But I find that so interesting, because I tell people, when I reflect back on me, I was a kid, then I became an adult, then I had a real estate career, then I was the mom, then I was the empty nester. And I tell people now I've come out of my spiritual closet. And while I've at the time loved everything I did, when you hide things about yourself to please other people, that was really weighing on me a lot. That I didn't feel I could speak openly about my spirituality. So I kept quiet. And it just, you shrink. You really shrink, is how I felt. I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, but I wasn't talking. So how would you encourage people to be themselves, speak their truth? And if someone doesn't like it, that's not about them, that's about the other person.
Yeah, it's a really scary thing to put yourself out there and have that level of vulnerability. And so I say practice with small steps and with people you trust first, right? So it's going to be your family, your closest friends. Start to share those things about yourself unapologetically, and get, kind of real with yourself as well. Like, how does that make me feel when they do react, and dig in deeper? What is the root cause of that? Is it something I was told when I was a child that maybe I need to let go of? Is it an insecurity of my own that now is like a little wound that when somebody mentions it, I feel really exposed? And so it's really just taking those baby steps of doing the inner work on yourself and then slowly sharing it with people. And eventually you get to that point where you're able to speak your truth and stand up for yourself and be unapologetic with other people as well. And for some people, it's actually easier to open up to a complete stranger instead of that vulnerability with family and friends. So it could go either way, where you're like, let me just tell you my story. Let me just share something about myself that I normally wouldn't share. And then it's a lot of reflection at the end of the day of, how did that make me feel? Did that feel good? Do I need to work more? What would I have said if I could have said more? And so spending time reflecting, not just racing through life, is going to be really beneficial as well.
Wow, that is some great advice. And I was looking over your bio, and it says you have a background in education.
Yes,
what
I actually
is
started.
Your background?
Yeah, I started my career as a high school English teacher. So
Ooh,
I'm one of those
brave.
kids. When I was back in like 5th grade, I loved to play the teacher. Like, hey, can I read the answers? Can I read in front of the class? I just loved it. And so I knew I was going to go on that trajectory. And I did. I taught high school English for a number of years. And I realized that it wasn't about teaching English to students. It wasn't about the literature or how to write a persuasive essay or, any of those things that you do in English class. It was more about getting them to think about things and using stories as sort of that gateway to explore values and beliefs and decisions. And then the other side of it was, how can I prepare them to be great human beings? So how can I put them on this path to have some of that self-awareness, think about what they want to do after they graduate high school, give them that, safety zone for them to speak about who they are, write their poetry, share their stories in class. And so that really was the starting point for all of this. And I say, then I just kind of transitioned into teaching adults. So, as a learning development specialist and a leadership and organizational development person in HR, that is exactly what you're doing. You really are just continuing to help people learn, grow, develop, and it's just in the workplace. But so many of the things that I talk about in the workplace translate into personal lives as well. So it's never just, hey, let's focus on this team and this goal for the team. It's always about the dynamics in personalities and stories and that emotional intelligence and how does that work for you. But you always take it away and go, I'm going to try this with, my husband or my wife or my kids or my family. And people find a lot of crossover in the tools and techniques that I share with them when I work with them in the workplace.
I see. And you brought up storytelling, and it seems like that's almost a lost art anymore, that no one has time for the stories. But one of the things I learned in working with a coach is she called it a springboard story. And anytime I told about my life, I offered a springboard story that related to what I was talking about. And I seemed to get more interest. So do you think that's important, to relate the story that you're talking about to something in your own life?
Absolutely. I mean, this is another thing that makes us human is the art of storytelling. Before we ever had, social media where we're sharing posts or even written language, people would sit around the campfire and they'd tell their story, and that oral tradition of passing down lessons and history and just something about themselves is so innate in who we are as human beings. And I think because technology has really allowed us to diversify how we communicate, there is a little bit of lost art in storytelling because everything is 30-second clips, right? 15-second posts. It's the shortened version of things. And getting down to talking to somebody and having a deep conversation with them takes time, it takes energy, and you have to be really intentional about that. So I agree, like having those stories that really get to the heart of who you are that you can share with people, especially people that you've just met or you just start working with, is really important because it does give them a little bit more insight into who you are. And then it allows them to ask those questions to learn more. But it really is a way that we relate to each other.
I love that. I love that. And I know we've only got a few more minutes, and I want to get in everything about you. So can you tell us that about 20 years of service with the National Guard?
Yes, I
That's
served.
amazing, and kudos.
Thank you. I served in the Minnesota Air National Guard. I joined a couple years out of high school. I'm from Duluth, Minnesota, and there's a guard base up there. So a lot of my friends went into it. And I thought this is such a great thing for just going to school. It really helped with paying those student loans. I had a part-time job then. I worked on F-16 aircraft. So I'm like, this is really cool, really fun. Like, how many people get to work on a fighter jet? And I didn't think I was going to stay in that long. This was like, okay, I'm going to do my 6-year enlistment and I'm going to get out. And of course, that was the time of 9/11 and wars and all of the things that were happening. And so I did stay in. And a lot of that was due to the people I worked with. I mean, you just build such strong relationships with that group of people that it became a family. And especially for Guard, it's really community based. And you're all going into work and you're all living in that same community. And so you build really strong relationships. But the other thing that it really allowed me to do is to build that leadership capacity, seeing things from a different point of view in a different environment where resiliency is really important and quick decision making. But the relationships are just as important as well. Really helped me sort of build some of those other leadership skills and perspectives. And I could carry that in once again to all of the other areas of my work and my life. And 20 years later, I retired from that role, and it's again just been, it was just a great experience for me, and I I always highly encourage folks to get to know their local guard folks. But then, those younger kids, if you're not sure what you want to do, it's a great way to really figure out who you are and get some really cool world experiences if you join.
And you might get to work on a fighter jet.
Right. That's always my fun fact of like, you would never guess. And like, guess what? I used to work on these fighter jets. So people can't believe it.
No, just listening to you, looking at you, that would, if you gave me 3 things and that was one of them, I would say, oh, that's false.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now we are getting towards the end of our time, and you've given so much amazing information. But what I would like you to do is leave our audience with 1 or 2 nuggets. I feel like people are struggling a little bit now, how to best fit in, looking around, what's going on, why is this happening? What would you tell someone right now to help them understand who they are, and it's okay to be themselves?
Yeah, I think the first thing is get really okay with being alone and being with yourself. Like, you are your own best friend. And so taking that time to reflect, to do the things that you love and understand what it is that makes you happy and brings you joy, and then share that with other people. So really, that 2 steps goes hand in hand of, you have to really dig deep and do the work on yourself first. No matter who you want to be or what you want to do, the more self-aware you are, the more authentic you are, the further you're going to get and the better experience you're going to have. And then, really sharing that openly with people. But don't be afraid, right? And once again, everybody is human. Everybody is walking these same paths, having these same challenges. And you can actually find comfort in that support, in sharing your story with other people and getting to know other people, because they're going through the same thing. And so when we come at things from that perspective of, maybe somebody else has gone through this and I have a conversation with them and it sparks something in me. It gives me a good idea. It gives me a direction. It helps me come up with a solution. Or I find somebody that I really enjoy spending time with, and now I've got a new buddy to go do yoga with or take a walk with or try to learn how to paint. You never know what you're going to find. And I think we need to just be really open to that. Get off your phone, take the headphones out, engage with the world around you, because that's the only way you're really going to have those experiences, if we're open to engaging with people. And I also say energy is contagious. So the energy that you bring into a room is going to have a ripple effect. And so be conscious of the energy that you have. And is it positive? Is it uplifting? Or is it standoffish? And people can feel that. So, be that light for other people, have a positive outlook, and really share your energy with other people.
That is amazing. And I so agree with everything. And one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because I learn so much from each and every guest. And today is absolutely no exception. So I have had a wonderful time interviewing you. I have learned so much. And what I have done for our audience is in Sarah's description, I have put several links where you can touch bases with her and where you could find her. And what I would tell you from learning from today's episode, please get in touch with her. She is absolutely amazing, very wise, lots of wisdom. And you know what? You are heartwarming. You are absolutely heartwarming. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. And like I said, I've learned so much from you. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week on Monday. Everybody have a great week and take care. Thank you.